That's the way we should think about monarchy culture. If we had the Edenic idea in our head, we would sit and look at that picture and cry. This really isn't where we need to be. I don't think that the plan of God and the goal of discipleship, i.e. to be like Jesus, is helped by not telling the truth. Okay, and usually, that people only think of that as a one-sided question. Usually it's, somebody whips out Old Testament passages and beats the Bible believer, over the head and says, you don't recognize the oppression here of, the negative view of women and so on and so forth. You're trying to sort of sugarcoat it. And you're finding ways to interpret these passages to sort of get the men in Israel off the hook, or the Torah patriarchy off the hook. You're being dishonest. Now, I'm sure there's some of that. I mean, I've encountered some of that where, people who don't want to sort of go down this trajectory will do that. They will try to take a passage and make it sort of not say what it actually says, to soften it. Okay, I don't think that's helpful. I'll leave it there for now. But that coin has another side to it. So I think on the one hand, we need to avoid sugarcoating passages, to sort of soften them so that they feel better to us, us as moderns. And we also need to not impose our sensibilities and our preferences culturally on them and pretend that they would think like us. I think both of those approaches are pretty flawed. So I think both sides of this really need to kind of examine their assumptions and their strategies for this. Now, I'm just going to jump into some slides before we hit the readings. I think we have a few things that we really need to remember that are basic. And that is, when Jesus gets asked questions about divorce and remarriage, and even, to some extent, obviously, divorce and marriage and remarriage has something to do with gender roles, in the ancient world, in the Old Testament. And other things. He doesn't bother defending Torah on several occasions. What he does is he dips into the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, and he'll appeal to things in Genesis. And the most famous is the divorce and remarriage question he gets. Look, from the beginning, it was not so. It's an appeal to creation order. It's an appeal to the way God really wanted things from the beginning. And I've said before in this class, again, the culture that was really handed down by God, if there is such a culture, is the one that was handed down in Eden. Because everything else is a post-edenic, i.e. post-fall situation. So if there's an ideal, it's not Torah per se. It is the original creation. It's creation order. And that informs how we treat each other. It informs, again, both male and female are imagers. Both male and female, again, are steward rulers of Eden. This is their status. Again, this is the ideal. Everything else we're dealing with is not the ideal. Even if it's something that we find in Israelite culture, it's still not the ideal. What is Israelite culture under Moses, or, not the judges, because that's just the wild, wild west, but Moses and, let's say, the united monarchy under David and Solomon, that's about as good as it gets. What's the culture there? It's still a way station on the way to reversing humanity and human conditions and the human dilemma as it is. It's still a way station. It is an incomplete picture. They have not arrived. Okay, the new Eden is not under Solomon. Okay, the easiest way to demonstrate that, get that in your head, is read the narrative about Solomon's succession. Okay, there are lots of people who really are unhappy with Solomon for legitimate reasons. Okay, that ain't Eden. Okay, it just isn't. But that's like the apex of the Israelite monarchy. So it is a dim picture. Think of it this way. Just as after the return from exile by the, what's left of Judaism's, 2 tribes and then any other stragglers from other tribes that go back to the land, just as they rebuild the temple and then they sit there when they see it and cry because it doesn't look anything like Solomon's temple in all its glory. Okay, that's the way we should think about monarchy culture. If we had the Edenic idea in our head, we would sit and look at that picture and cry. This really isn't where we need to be. It's better than being a slave in Babylon or whatever. At least we're connected to the land again. We have a temple. It's better, but it's not what God wanted, and it's not where the story is going to end. It's not what he intends. This is a way station. So I often find that when people start critiquing Torah culture, Israelite culture, and start bashing it, they forget these things. They import their own assumptions about how people would feel. Okay, so we have a feeling-based hermeneutic, and that's always really helpful. That'll never change. That's a great method, okay? So we have a feelings-based hermeneutic, and then we forget that these things were dim reflections on the way to what God wanted to restore. And Jesus reminds people of that. Okay, he reminds people of that. This is not where the story, the days of Solomon and Moses, that's not where the story is supposed to end. You're still in exile. Okay? You're still in exile. Okay, you need a Messiah. Yeah, this is the whole point.